Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. How much could a few extra napkins possibly cost? For one customer, it cost her a brand new SUV, her dignity, and over $50,000 in legal fees. She tried to sue me for her own mistake, but she had no idea she was messing with a corporation that plays legal hardball. You have to hear how they did it. I work at a fast food place with a drive-thru that's been around since the early 90s. It's one of those older designs with the brick wall extending out past the window, which actually gives us a little shelter from rain when we're handing out orders. The setup has worked fine for 30-something years without any real issues, until Karen showed up. It was a pretty normal Tuesday afternoon around 2 p.m., so we weren't slammed but had a steady stream of cars. I'm working the drive-thru window and this white SUV pulls up. Expensive-looking thing, one of those luxury models that costs more than I make in 2 years. The woman driving it has that haircut, you know the one. The "I'd like to speak to your manager" special. She orders a kid's meal, a regular burger, and a large drink. Simple enough. Total comes to like $8.47. I tell her the amount and she immediately gets this pinched look on her face like I just asked her to donate a kidney. $8? For this? That's absolutely ridiculous. Your prices are outrageous. I give her my standard customer service response about how I don't set the prices, but I can get my manager if she has concerns. She waves me off like I'm an annoying fly and shoves her credit card at me. I process it, hand it back with her receipt, and start getting her order together. This is where things get weird. She's sitting there in her idling SUV, reading the receipt like it's written in ancient hieroglyphics. Just staring at it, shaking her head, muttering loud enough for me to hear about highway robbery and corporate greed. Lady, it's a kid's meal and a burger. You're not financing a yacht. I hand her the drink first, which is our standard procedure. She takes it, still muttering, and puts it in her cup holder without even looking at it. Then I hand her the bag of food. She grabs it, immediately opens it right there at the window, and starts rummaging through it like she's searching for buried treasure. Excuse me, she says, her voice getting that sharp edge that every retail worker knows means trouble. Where are my napkins? I point to the bag. They're in there, ma'am. We put them inside with the food. I don't see them. I can literally see the napkins from where I'm standing. They're right there on top of the fries. But okay, customer is always right, or whatever they pay me minimum wage to pretend. They're right on top of your fries, ma'am, the white paper napkins. She digs around some more. Pulls out the napkins, looks at them like I've handed her used tissues, and says, "These are completely insufficient. I need at least 10 napkins. This is a children's meal. Do you have any idea how messy children are?" Here's the thing. She's alone in the car. No kid, no car seat. Nothing to indicate a child exists anywhere in her immediate vicinity. But sure, let me grab you a stack of napkins for your imaginary messy child. I reach over to our napkin dispenser and grab a handful, maybe 6 or 7 napkins. I hand them to her through the window. I said 10 napkins. Can you not count? Deep breath. Smile. Remember the paycheck. I grab a few more napkins and hand them over. She counts them. Actually sits there and counts them while the car behind her is waiting. This is 9 napkins. Let me get you one more, ma'am. I grab exactly one more napkin and hand it to her. She snatches it out of my hand, and here comes the line that I will remember until I'm old and gray. You know, this is exactly why people like you work in fast food. You can't even handle a simple napkin request without attitude. People like me. I'm working to pay for community college, but sure, tell me more about people like me from your luxury SUV. I don't say anything. I just maintain my customer service smile and say, "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" "No, you've done quite enough." And then she puts her SUV in drive, but she's still turned around looking at me, still glaring, probably trying to telepathically make my head explode or something. She's not looking where she's going at all. She hits the gas while still facing backward and toward the window. Her front bumper immediately clips the corner of that brick wall I mentioned, the one that extends past the window. There's this horrible scraping, crunching sound as her pristine white SUV drags along the brick, leaving a long, deep gouge down the entire passenger side. Her side mirror gets ripped clean off and goes bouncing across the pavement with this pathetic little tinkling sound. She slams on her brakes. For a second, everything is just silent except for her engine idling and someone's radio playing faintly from the car behind her. Then she starts screaming, "What did you do? What did you do to my car?" I'm standing there at the window, both hands visible, holding literally nothing, very clearly inside the building and a good 4 feet away from her vehicle. Ma'am, I didn't touch your car. You hit the wall. I did not hit any wall. You did something. You reached out and grabbed my wheel. Now, I'm not a physics expert, but I'm pretty sure my arms aren't Mr. Fantastic stretchy enough to reach 4 feet out of a window, through her driver's side window, across her entire body, and grab the right side of her steering wheel, all while she's looking directly at me. But apparently, that's the story we're going with. She throws her SUV in park, right there in the drive-thru lane, and gets out to inspect the damage. The passenger side is absolutely trashed. Long, deep scratches through the paint all the way down to bare metal. The mirror is lying on the ground in 3 pieces. There's even a small dent in the front panel where she initially impacted the wall. The car behind her honks. She whirls around and screams, "I'm having an emergency!" at them. My manager, Tony, comes over to the window because he heard the commotion. What happened? She hit the wall while pulling away, I tell him quietly. Karen hears this because of course she does and storms back over to the window. Your employee grabbed my steering wheel and caused me to crash. I'm calling the police. Tony has this look on his face like he's trying to solve a difficult math problem. Ma'am, our employee is inside the building. How exactly would he have grabbed your steering wheel? He reached out of the window. He'd have to have arms about 6 feet long to do that. I know what happened to my own car. She pulls out her phone and starts dialing. Tony asks me to write down exactly what happened while it's fresh in my mind. I grab our incident log and start writing every detail I can remember. A few minutes later, 2 police officers show up. Karen is still in the drive-thru lane, blocking everyone, now on the phone with who I assume is her insurance company. The officers talk to her first, and I can see her gesturing wildly at the window, at her car, at me, making these big sweeping arm motions like she's directing traffic. Then one of the officers comes to the window. He's probably in his 40s, looks tired, like this is not the call he wanted to take on a Tuesday afternoon. Hey there, can you tell me what happened? I explain the whole thing. The napkins, the attitude, how she drove off while looking backward at me, how she hit the wall. He writes it all down in his little notebook. Did you touch her vehicle at any time? No, sir, I was inside the whole time, just handing her the food and napkins through the window. That's what I figured, he says. You got cameras? Tony, who's been standing behind me this whole time, pipes up. Yes, sir, we have cameras covering the entire drive-thru. I can pull up the footage right now if you want to see it. The officer's face lights up like it's Christmas morning. Yeah, I'd love to see that. We take him back to Tony's office where we have the security monitor. Tony pulls up the footage from the camera that covers the drive-thru window. It's a pretty good camera, too. Recently upgraded, crystal clear image even though it's a cloudy day. We watch the whole thing play out on screen. You can see me handing her the drink, the food, the napkins, the extra napkins, the final single napkin. You can see her sitting there yelling at me. You can see her put the car in drive while still turned around. And you can see, clear as day, her SUV rolling forward and clipping the corner of the brick wall, dragging along it, the mirror getting ripped off. My hands are visible the entire time, never leaving the window frame, never going anywhere near her car. The officer watches it twice, taking notes the second time through. Okay, that's pretty clear cut, he says. Your employee didn't touch her vehicle. She hit the wall on her own. Tony asks, do you need a copy of this footage? Yeah, I'll take a copy. Let me go explain the situation to her. We go back to the window and watch through it as the officer approaches Karen. We can't hear what's being said, but we can see her face going from angry to disbelieving to even angrier. She's shaking her head, pointing at me again, making more wild gestures. The officer stays calm, keeps talking, and eventually shows her something on his phone. I'm guessing it's a photo or video of the footage. Her face goes pale, then red, then kind of purple. The officer comes back to the window. Ma'am's probably going to file an insurance claim, so you'll want to keep that footage. I'm writing this up as driver error, single vehicle accident. She's free to leave once she moves her vehicle. Is she going to try to say I did it to her insurance, I ask? She might, but you've got clear video evidence. I wouldn't worry about it. Tony thanks him, and the officers leave. Karen sits in her car for another 10 minutes, on the phone, probably arguing with her insurance company. Finally, she drives off, her wrecked SUV scraping slightly on her front wheel well. The car that was behind her this entire time finally gets to order. The guy just says, well, that was entertaining. Can I get a number 3? I figure that's the end of it. Crazy lady crashes her own car, tries to blame minimum wage worker, video proves she's wrong, she slinks off in shame. Right? Wrong. About 2 weeks later, Tony calls me into his office before my shift. He's got this weird expression on his face, somewhere between amused and annoyed. Remember that lady who hit the wall? The napkin lady? Yeah, hard to forget. She hired a lawyer. We got served with a demand letter yesterday. My stomach drops. Wait, what? A demand letter for what? Tony slides a piece of paper across his desk. It's printed on fancy letterwork, some law firm's letterhead. I start reading. The letter claims that I negligently distracted the driver, that the drive-through design is inherently dangerous, and that the company is liable for extensive damages to her vehicle and for her emotional distress. The letter demands $15,000 for vehicle repairs and diminished value, plus another $10,000 for emotional distress and lost wages while her car was being repaired. $25,000 total. This is insane, I say. The video shows exactly what happened. I know. Corporate's legal department knows too. They sent me an email this morning saying we're not paying her a dime. They told me to keep that video backed up in multiple places and not to worry about it. I wasn't worried before, but now I kind of am. I've never been involved in any kind of legal thing before. What if somehow this goes wrong? What if her lawyer is better than Corporate's lawyer? What if I have to go to court? Tony must see the look on my face because he says, "Dude, relax. She's got nothing. You didn't do anything wrong and we have clear video proof. This is just her trying to intimidate us into settling. Corporate deals with stuff like this all the time." 3 weeks after that, we get the actual lawsuit. Karen isn't just suing the company, she's naming me personally as a defendant too. Now I'm definitely worried. I call Corporate's legal department using the number Tony gave me, and I talk to this attorney named Mark, who sounds way too cheerful about the whole thing. "Yeah, don't worry about being named personally," Mark says. "It's a scare tactic. She's hoping you'll freak out and convince the company to settle. We're gonna defend you as part of defending the company. You won't have to pay for a lawyer or anything." But what if we lose? We're not gonna lose. I watched the video. It's the most open and shut case I've seen in 5 years. She's going to waste a lot of money on her attorney and get nothing. That makes me feel a little better, but only a little. I've seen enough court TV to know that sometimes things don't go the way they should. The legal stuff drags on forever. Discovery, depositions, motions, more depositions. I honestly stopped paying attention to most of it after the first few months. Mark keeps me updated when necessary, but mostly it's just boring legal procedure stuff that doesn't require anything from me. Then, about 6 months in, I get called for my deposition. This is where I have to go sit in a lawyer's office and answer questions under oath while someone types everything I say. Tony drives me there since it's during my shift and corporate is paying me for the time. We show up at this law office in a fancy building downtown, all glass and steel and expensive-looking furniture in the waiting room. Karen's attorney is this guy in his 60s with gray hair and a suit that probably costs more than my car is worth. He's got that look like he thinks he's the smartest person in any room. Mark is there too, younger guy, sharp suit but not as expensive, friendly face. The deposition takes about 2 hours. Karen's attorney asks me the same questions like 50 different ways, trying to get me to say something that contradicts the video or my original statement. "Isn't it true that you were frustrated with Mrs. Henderson?" "I was doing my job, sir." "But she asked for extra napkins and that annoyed you, correct?" "No, sir. Getting napkins is part of my job." "You didn't feel any anger toward her?" "No, sir." "Not even a little irritation?" "People ask for extra napkins all the time, sir. It's not unusual." On and on like that. He's trying to build some kind of narrative where I was so angry about napkins that I... What? Psychically pushed her car into the wall, grew stretchy arms and grabbed her wheel? The whole thing is absurd. Mark barely asks me any questions, just confirms that my written statement is accurate and that the video shows what actually happened. He seems almost bored, which I take as a good sign. After we're done, Mark walks Tony and me to the elevator. "That went great," he says. "You did perfect. Stayed calm, stuck to the facts, didn't get baited into saying anything stupid." "What happens now?" I ask. "Now we depose Mrs. Henderson. That should be interesting." Interesting turns out to be an understatement. Tony sits in on Karen's deposition and tells me about it later that night when I come in for my closing shift. "Dude, it was a disaster for her," Tony says, grinning. Her own attorney looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Apparently Karen stuck to her story that I reached out and grabbed her steering wheel, even when confronted with the video evidence showing that was impossible. She claimed the video was edited or doctored or something. Her attorney tried to walk her back from that, but she doubled down. Then she started going off about how the drive-thru design is dangerous and how the wall shouldn't be there and how it's a trap designed to damage cars. Mark apparently asked her how many other cars had hit the wall in the 30 years the drive-thru has been operating. She said she didn't know but assumed it was lots. Then Mark entered into evidence a maintenance record showing that in 32 years of operation there had been exactly 0 incidents of vehicles hitting that wall. 0 in 32 years, until Karen. The deposition apparently went downhill from there, with Karen getting more and more agitated and her attorney trying harder and harder to control the situation. A few weeks after that, something beautiful happens. Karen's attorney makes a demand during discovery. He wants copies of all employee training materials, all safety protocols, all maintenance records for the drive-thru, all incident reports for the last 10 years, and basically every piece of paper corporate has about that location. He also specifies that he wants physical copies of everything, mailed to his office via certified mail with signature confirmation, to preserve the chain of custody. I only hear about this because Mark calls me, laughing. Her attorney just screwed up, he says. He demanded physical copies of everything. Do you have any idea how much paperwork we have about your location? A lot? Try boxes and boxes. Employee files, training manuals, safety audits, inspection reports, maintenance logs going back a decade. We're going to comply with his request exactly as he specified. Over the next month, corporate sends Karen's attorney hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents. Every single thing he asked for copied, boxed up, sent certified mail. Training manuals that are 200 pages long, daily maintenance checklists for 10 years, employee training records, safety inspection reports, corporate policy manuals, operations procedures, equipment maintenance logs, everything. Tony tells me that he heard through the grapevine that Karen's attorney's office was drowning in paperwork. And here's the best part. Her attorney has to review all of it. That's how discovery works. You ask for documents, you have to actually look at them. And he's billing her by the hour for every minute he spends reviewing Corporate Policy Manual Volume 7, Section 4.2.b, Subsection 3, Proper Ice Machine Cleaning Protocols. My manager also mentions that corporate's doing everything they can to make this as expensive as possible for her. They're not making it hard. They're complying with every request. They're just complying exactly as asked in the most thorough, time-consuming way possible. Then there's the issue with the independent expert. Karen's attorney hires some traffic engineer to examine the drive-thru design and testify that it's dangerous. Corporate gets notified that this expert is going to spend a day at our location, measuring angles, watching cars go through, taking photos, the whole 9 yards. The guy shows up on a Wednesday morning. He's got a clipboard, a camera, a measuring tape, and a very official-looking vest. He spends 6 hours at our location. He measures the width of the drive-thru lane. He measures the angle of the turn. He measures the distance from the window to the edge of the wall. He watches probably 50 cars go through without incident. He takes approximately 1 million photos. Tony chats with him during a slow period. The expert seems like a nice guy, very professional. He doesn't tell us what his conclusions are, but Tony said he seemed pretty thorough. We never hear anything about that expert's report. I ask Mark about it later, and he just grins. Let's just say their expert's findings didn't support their case. They buried that report real quick. Corporate ends up hiring their own expert, some retired traffic engineer who spent 40 years designing intersections and parking lots. His report is apparently something like 70 pages long and basically says the drive-thru is designed well, meets all safety standards, and has an exceptional safety record. Mark emails me a copy, and I read through it even though half of it is technical jargon I don't understand. The basic conclusion is that any driver paying attention to where they're going could easily navigate the drive-thru without hitting anything. Over a year into this whole mess, Mark files some kind of motion asking the judge to throw the case out because Karen has no evidence. He explains it to me over the phone. Basically, corporate's arguing that her case is so weak it shouldn't even go to trial. They've got video evidence, witness statements, expert reports, and a 32-year history of 0 incidents. She's got her own testimony that contradicts video evidence and an expert report she won't show anyone. The hearing on the motion happens on a Thursday. I don't go. Corporate doesn't need me there. Mark says it's just lawyers arguing in front of a judge. Mark calls me that afternoon. We won. Judge granted our motion on the spot and dismissed the case. It's over. Seriously? Just like that? Just like that. The judge watched the video, looked at our evidence, and basically said there was no genuine dispute about what happened. She dismissed the case with prejudice, which means Karen can't refile it. I feel this massive wave of relief wash over me. It's finally over. But it's not quite over. 2 weeks later, Mark calls me again. Remember how I said we won? Well, we won even bigger than I thought. The judge sanctioned her and her attorney. What does that mean? It means the judge decided her lawsuit was frivolous and filed in bad faith. Karen has to pay our legal fees. Her attorney got fined $5,000 and was reported to the state bar for potential discipline. Wait, she has to pay corporate's legal fees? How much is that? I can't give you exact numbers, but let's just say we weren't cheap. Probably somewhere in the mid-five figures. So Karen wanted $25,000 from us. Instead, she's paying corporate probably $40,000 or $50,000 in legal fees, plus whatever she paid her own attorney, plus the $5,000 fine he got hit with. All because she couldn't admit she hit a wall while yelling at a fast food worker about napkins. The best part? Tony tells me a few weeks after everything is settled that one of the local attorneys started using Karen's case as an example when teaching younger lawyers. Apparently, frivolous lawsuits backed up by video evidence that disproves your own claims are textbook examples of what not to do. I still work at the same place, still working the same drive-thru window. We've had probably 10,000 cars come through since Karen's incident, 0 accidents, 0 cars hitting the wall. 0 people blaming minimum wage workers for their own driving mistakes. Well, except for Karen, but I'm pretty sure she's learned her lesson about napkins. The next one is a malicious compliance story. About 20 years ago, I used to work as an office assistant at a small company where we would receive orders from clients and then we would assign the work to one of our freelancers who were well compensated and respectable professionals. My boss was such a professional herself, and when possible, we would assign that work to her. I accepted the minimum wage job because she told me I could sometimes get tasks assigned as a freelancer with the nice freelancer compensation, that she would personally train me, and that in less than a year, I would most likely be promoted to a regular freelancer and make very good money. This sounded like a great career path to my young and naive ears. One of the things she had told me in the very beginning was that when you take over an order, you become like a project manager for that order. You need to make sure that the freelancer would finish the work on time, as the work was usually time-sensitive. Additionally, she loved going on long lectures about how she is paying me, minimum wage, for me to use my brain and figure things out when necessary. These lectures were mainly a vehicle for her to stroke her own ego by explaining to her employees how our brains were not as smart as hers. One day, our biggest corporate client had placed a large order that was due on a Monday by noon, and we had assigned the task to my boss to do over the weekend. It was Monday morning, time was ticking, and my boss hadn't arrived at the office. The client had called to see if we were going to provide the work soon, as it was urgent. I tried calling my boss, who didn't pick up her mobile. I called half an hour later and texted her. No answer or reply while noon was fast approaching. So I called her landline at home, her husband picked up, told me she wasn't home, and I explained very briefly why I was trying to get a hold of her. Less than an hour before noon, my boss called furious that I had been so insistent on getting a hold of her and that I had created a state of stress and emergency at her house. Her home number was for emergencies only, and this wasn't an emergency. It's not professional to call people when they are not at work. She told me she got everything under control and she was now sending the work to the client directly. When she arrived at the office, she gave me a big scolding in person and told me that I do need to hound other freelancers, but not her. It was her business and she got everything handled. She knew all the clients and they were clients because of her. She looked me in the eye and told me, if I take over a task, it's not your task anymore, it's my task. You don't need to bother me with reminders, you just give me the instructions from the client and I'll handle everything myself. From that point on, your job is done. I never ever miss deadlines. If the client calls, you tell them I'm on it and you don't call me or text me about it. Fair enough. I apologized for the stress and repeated the new instructions back to her for confirmation. She was very happy with that and confirmed I had understood everything. She once more gave me her favorite lecture about how she is paying me, minimum wage, for me to use my brain, with a lot of condescending examples of how she always uses her brain, unlike us normal workers. I could only nod along as if her narcissistic rant was actually teaching anybody anything. About a month or so later, another client come in with an order. I accepted it, my boss was available to handle it, so I forwarded everything to her, and I considered my work in regard to that order done as instructed. On the day of the deadline, I was on vacation and was hiking in a remote area with spotty cell coverage. The other office assistant called me and told me the client had called the office to check if the work was ready. I told my colleague that our boss was on it and that we didn't need to worry as our boss was going to handle it, and that my clear instructions were to tell the client our boss was personally on it, the task would be done by the deadline, and explicitly not to call our boss to remind her of the deadline. Then since I was on vacation, I needed to conserve my battery and everything at the office was handled, I switched off my phone. An approaching deadline that my boss had to meet was explicitly not an emergency. Also, I had recently realized that my boss had knowingly misled me about the career opportunities this job was affording me, so I wasn't going to be on call on my rare day off. While I was hiking without a care in the world, my boss had managed to forget about the deadline. By the time she realized she had missed it, the office was closed. My boss had urgently finished the work, but it turned out she didn't know the clients so well as she didn't have their contact details. As the order was in the office and my phone was off, she had to go there herself, fetch it, and use the contact details to deliver the work late. This was particularly embarrassing as my colleague had informed the client our boss was personally doing the work for them. When I came back to work, it was pandemonium. She screamed at me, but I simply pointed out that everything I had done was following her instructions. "Why did you do this? You told me to. Why didn't you do that? You told me not to." She was fuming, but she knew I was correct and I had acted exactly as instructed. She also screamed at me for my phone being off, but I said I needed to conserve my battery for emergencies, and this was clearly not an emergency, and I'm not on call while on vacation anyway. Malicious compliance for the win, right? Well, narcissists never accept blame, and she had an idea of how to shift the blame to me after all. "But you didn't provide me with the client's contact details with the order assignment. How could I have delivered them the work? It was your fault for not providing me with all the information." I pointed out that she told me she knew all the clients personally, but if she had used her brain like she is constantly telling us to, she could have easily noticed that the order instructions were on the client's letterhead with all their contact details spelled out, on every single page. Bottom and top. Now that was a huge slap to her fragile ego, and remembering her face in that moment still makes me smile. Needless to say, I was fired. Of course I didn't mind. Don't you just love happy endings? The next one is an entitled people story. Since I had the displeasure of encountering one of these crazy entitled people firsthand, and since I can finally think clearly now that I am no longer in a lot of pain from having my wisdom teeth removed, I figured I would share it here. This happened about a week ago, on the 14th. It was early afternoon. My mother, who is 65, my uncle, who is 59, and I, 35, were on our way to the store to pick up a few things for me. The store name starts with a W. If you know, you know. I had my wisdom teeth removed 6 days earlier. The dentist who removed them did not stitch me up, and I was mostly restricted to liquids and very soft foods until the holes closed enough for me to start eating more normally again. I was out of things I could eat at home, so we made a grocery run after stopping by the dentist's office for my mother's checkup. We pulled into the parking lot and took a space in the handicap section near the front. There were 2 electric shopping carts sitting right in front of the car by the signpost, left there by shoppers who had already taken off. My mother and I got out, and we each took one. My uncle stayed in the car to keep the air conditioning going. As we headed toward the store entrance, my mother was far enough ahead that she did not hear it, but I heard a man yelling behind us in the parking lot. "Obesity ain't a disability. You lazy fat ducks have no business taking those chairs. You can duck and walk." I turned and looked while we kept moving. Several parking spaces back was an angry man. He was older than me but younger than my mother, and he looked kinda like a very scroungy Chumley, just to give you a visual. He also walked with a slight limp. As my mother and I entered the store, I heard him shooting his mouth off again to some random guy in the parking lot, still throwing a tantrum about my mother and me using the electric carts. For context, yes, my mother and I are both obese, but we are also both legally disabled for different reasons, and we have a handicap placard in our car. My mother used to work at Safeway as a fuel attendant. In 2007, while she was at work, an elderly customer who was not paying attention ran her over and then drove off. That severely damaged my mother's hip and lower back. She also has knee problems from years of various falls along with arthritis in multiple places. She has had to walk with a cane ever since, and she cannot stand for long or walk long distances anymore. She cannot walk through an entire grocery store even with her cane. She needs one of those electric carts to get through shopping. As for me, I have severe lymphedema in both legs, venous stasis, lower back issues from falling down a flight of icy stairs years ago, and the beginning of arthritis in my lower back. If I stand for longer than about 15 minutes, I start losing feeling in my legs before they give out and I fall. Once I am down, I cannot get back up without help. I also have learning disabilities and chronic mental health issues. Both of us are disabled, and not specifically because of our weight. Our disabilities exist for other reasons. As much as we want to lose weight and struggle with it, we cannot do it through ordinary diet and exercise. My mother cannot for obvious reasons, and on top of my own issues, I have severe asthma that prevents strenuous activity. My inhalers barely take the edge off. We are both looking into alternative options to lose weight such as Zepbound, but that is getting slightly off topic. The point is that this a-hole saw two people with weight problems, and instead of realizing like a decent human being that some disabilities are not visible, decided to verbally attack us and later harass us. More on that in a minute. My mother's neon pink cane was even visible in the cart's basket, which the loudmouth conveniently missed. Keep in mind that I was in pain and could not really speak. The dentist had discouraged me from talking, so once we were inside the store, I had to find a creative way to tell my mother something was wrong. Meanwhile, after his parking lot rant, the man decided to come into the store. He grabbed a regular shopping cart and started stalking my mother and me through the aisles while pretending he was just shopping. Wherever my mother and I went, he was there. Produce, canned goods, pet food. It did not matter. He kept glaring at us, following us around, making snide comments, and grabbing random items off shelves before aggressively throwing them into his cart. It was obvious he was stalking us around the store, but my mother did not notice right away. When we finally got to the frozen food section, I managed to explain what was happening. I had my mother give me a pen and paper from her purse, and I wrote everything down. I told her what the man had yelled in the parking lot, how he had thrown a little rage fit, and how he was now stalking us through the store and acting menacing. My mother went over and confronted him with her cane in her hand. She asked if he had a problem. He immediately got aggressive. "Yeah, I do got a ducking problem, idiot. Obesity isn't a disability. You lazy fat fucks can walk." He said this while completely ignoring the fact that my mother was holding a cane. Honestly, I am kind of surprised my mother did not whack him with it repeatedly. I imagine that if he had moved one step closer, she probably would have. When it was time to check out, my mother got in line and told me to go out to the car and tell my uncle what was going on. So I parked my cart, went outside, and showed my uncle the paper I had written on. My uncle immediately went inside looking for the guy. When he found him at the checkout line and confronted him, a fight almost broke out. I was not there for that part because I stayed in the car. By then, my face was throbbing from the stress. My mother later told me it turned into a loud shouting match, with my uncle right in the guy's face while the guy refused to back down. 4 different managers escorted my uncle from the store to our car. Once outside, my uncle told them about the man's behavior and explained that he had gone inside to confront him because we felt threatened. Luckily, my uncle did not get banned. The other guy did. After he checked out, he came into the parking lot and started more trouble near where we were parked, while the managers were still standing right there. Some people have absolutely no manners, especially entitled ones. I hope getting banned from that store was worth being an a-hole over. Anyway, thank you for watching.